Welcome to Economic Forum, where today we are discussing events management. Many businesses hold different events in order to promote their visibility. And today we've brought an entrepreneur who is very much into events management, who is going to be telling us why she got into that, and also share some tips of how your business can also benefit from properly arranging events. Welcome, NYARIE PURVIS.
Thank you, John.
What motivated you to have this interest in organizing events?
The honest truth is, about 15 years ago, when I was staying in Washington, D.C., I had an opportunity to apply for a part-time job with one of D.C.'s larger events management companies. So it started off as a part-time job, and then I realized that it was an interesting field, and so I ran with it.
So in discussing with you, we are really going to be looking at the strategic aspect of events management, because at the end of the day, while it's an event and people are enjoying themselves, there has to be something that the business has to benefit out of that event. Say something about your experience with simply home events like weddings and others. In fact, even arranging a funeral.
So the issue that we often come across is we think, okay, let me host a wedding, or let me host a kitchen tea party, or whatever the case is. And then you think, I'll just get some food, I have a venue, and everything's good to go. But a number of things can actually go wrong on the day. And that's where you end up needing someone who can plan and execute the event. So it's not just, I'm going to invite a bunch of people to my home on Thursday at 6 o'clock and we'll eat a bunch of fried chicken and sadza and hope that, all goes well. Have you figured out what the weather is going to look like? Do you know who you will have at your home? Are all the characters necessarily going to get along? Is there a theme? Do you want to decorate it in any way? So there are a lot of things that go into putting an event together, whether it's a funeral, wedding, or just a simple get-together.
You've just shared with us your experience while you were in Washington, D.C., where you were invited to actually participate in events management. And I did stress that we want to look at the strategic aspect of organizing events. Is it something that when you move around and you're not organizing an event yourself, you feel that, yes, I've attended this event, but I can't figure out what it was for or what it would benefit the company or the entrepreneur who has organized it?
Sure. So I think at the end of the day, when a company is deciding to, or a group of people are deciding to plan and host an event, you have to start with the goal in mind. You have to start with the end in mind. What is your target audience? What are you trying to achieve? Is this a promotional event? Are you trying to market something? Are you trying to market your products, your goods and services? Are you trying to create awareness? A lot of charities and nonprofit organizations have to frequently throw events to bring in funding. So you have to start with the end in mind. A lot of businesses have a marketing budget, and they feel if they stick their banners and promotional products at other people's events, that's enough. Sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you actually need to host your own event. For example, golf days. Golf days are perfect places to network, for companies to network, for companies to meet potential clients, and to show existing clients that they appreciate them. So sporting events are great places in order, for companies to grow their businesses and to find out in a very informal setting, how they can do better as a company, if there are any shortfalls, and to just get casual feedback from clients. Yeah.
During COVID-19, what were some of the disappointments that events managers had to deal with, because most companies were not functioning properly? How did you deal with that period? Very difficult. It's still there, it's still with us, but there's a time when it was so intense.
I think this pandemic showed us that we had to be creative as an industry. One of the events that I recently managed was right in the middle of COVID, and it was via Zoom. We dropped off all the eats that everybody would have normally eaten when, at the venue. We dropped off everything that they were going to drink, the programs, and then we got a whole group of people in industry together and we executed a great event. But people...
Was the enthusiasm the same, NYARIE?
Funnily enough, it was, because we ended the event at about 8 o'clock and people didn't leave the Zoom call until about 11 midnight. People are now sort of, the normal people that would be lingering after an event, sort of drinking together, talking together, they were still, sure, we didn't have that human contact, the actual physical contact, but it was a nice change because I think during the pandemic, a lot of us were now confined to our dining room tables, our kitchen tables. And so just getting together with other people, even though it wasn't in person, was a breath of fresh air.
Although it was successful, is it something that you would recommend to be the norm, or you would rather go back to what we're used to, for actually gathering and having these eats and drinks during these events?
No, I would never, ever, 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 ever wish to go back to that place again. I mean, because there are small challenges like technical difficulties. Someone doesn't have enough bandwidth, and they're in the middle of saying something, and then you sort of lose a connection. For example, a couple of people want to talk at the same time. It just doesn't translate the same when you're online. So yeah, definitely, I think we're super excited to start to seeing everything opening back up.
That is NYARIE PURVIS, who is our guest today, talking about events management, how events can be organized in order to grow your business, in order to make your business visible. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. Join us in the second segment. Welcome to the second segment of Economic Forum, where we are discussing with NYARIE PURVIS, who is an events manager. I want to talk about planning in one's life, the importance of planning. And this affects, which events you're going to attend, what you're going to do, and so forth. Planning.
So my number one go-to when we are discussing planning is set up a goal. How is your day, your week, your month, your social calendar, your corporate calendar? What does it look like? And then once you've set up a goal, set up checklists. I'm a huge fan of checklists because if you don't have a map of how to get to where you're going, simply knowing where you're going is not enough. So on a day-to-day basis, one should always start off with some sort of diary, whether it's on your phone, on your iPad, laptop, in a book. I'm an old-fashioned person. I use a pen and paper. And set up what you're going to do throughout the course of the day.
And in some cases, some people don't attend some important functions where they're invited because they have not planned and they've not diarized. Tell us something about how we can improve that aspect so that we don't disappoint those people who will be looking forward to us attending important events.
So what I tend to prefer to do at the beginning of the year is I take a look at various corporate calendars. And then make a decision based on what I as an individual or what we as a company want to accomplish, and then decide which events to attend and why. So for example, I mentioned golf events earlier. A lot of executives are seen on the golf course. So if I know that there's a particular area of the business that we need to grow and I need to speak to decision makers, I may not necessarily be able or have an in to make an appointment with those executives, but if you bump into them on the golf course, then it's a prime opportunity to introduce yourself, your products, and your services. So I think as a business and as an individual, if you're trying to grow any type of business, you've got to start off by growing your network. And the only way you can network is by meeting people. And so, yes, attending events is very important, and more importantly than that, deciding which events to attend, can actually grow a network. Yes.
And when let's talk about courtesy, whereby an invitation has been sent to you by email or by WhatsApp or by whatever means, and you don't respond, you don't acknowledge that you have received, and you also don't indicate whether you are attending or not. This is very common. Tell us what should be the correct way of doing things.
I think we need to learn to be able to say no, thank you. If you're not able to make an event, please
maybe if it's a close friend, NYARIE, and you are finding it difficult to say no, I cannot attend your wedding or something like that, how best can we go about that?
At the end of the day, if you are unable to let me know that you will not be able to attend, imagine I'm going to go through the cost of potentially trying to accommodate you, and then you don't show up. I could have saved myself $50 on your plate and $20 worth of parking fees on your behalf. So I think the right thing to do is to actually RSVP, whether you're saying yes or I'm unable to come, and you don't have to give a reason. Maybe the reason is very personal and you don't want to share it, but just let the person or the company that is inviting you know that you're not able to attend, because it really does affect how they budget for their events, whether it's a wedding or a corporate event. And also it's just polite
to do so.
It's just polite, yes.
And the other thing that happens, NYARIE, is that you invite someone and they've got two other friends, you don't know about them, and they just turn up, you've invited John and he turns up with 4 other people. How do you deal with that?
I think as event organizers, we need to get into the habit of learning how to turn people away. Okay. If they're not on a list and it's strictly by invite.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other event organizers actually state the number of people they want, and also that they don't want any children at events, and that disappoints many families, because your aunt NYARIE, the one we used to visit during the holidays, is going to be left out, and somebody who is dear to your life, in some way, is going to be left out because of that. How do you deal with such issues in events?
So I think one needs to be able to manage your relationships. Not everyone is going to be invited to everything. As a corporate, we might invite, a CEO of the company and not the CTO or the FD. You just have to know how to manage your relationships, whether they're personal or business, so that people do understand that there's a reason why certain people were invited, and maybe I'll invite you next time.
Yes. Maybe at times you invite maybe the CEO, and you want the CEO in particular. Mm-hmm. Then they send their director of human resources, who may not really be the person you wanted because of position as well as personality. How do you usually specify?
I think it's fine if the CEO is not able to make it. And sometimes this happens because of a last minute issue. So for example, maybe a CEO would have RSVP'd, yes. And then 2 days before the event, they realize that they're not able to come and they send somebody else. It's fine. Establish a relationship with whoever they have sent, and then use them as a means to get an audience with your target.
Yes, that's NYARIE PURVIS, who is an events manager, who is helping us, about some of the aspects of managing, different events that we are invited to, because it's strategic that those who organize those events would have invited you, and also the purpose of the whole event is actually planned. That's why we talked about planning, in our discussion. This is Economic Forum, and if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. And if you have missed some of the episodes, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. Join us in the third and final segment. Welcome to the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where we are discussing various issues affecting our lives, particularly about events that we attend, how they are organized, and how we can be courteous when we attend them. and I've got NYARIE, PURVIS here in the studio. One of the things that is very important when organizing something is how you choose people to help you to put up something. How best can you do that? Because everyone wants to be included. If it is a wedding, you know, your aunt's daughter, your sister's daughter wants to be involved. Someone from another institution where you attend also want to be involved. But you want to manage that very well so that your relationships continue to be cordial. How best do you approach that?
So I think it's important to identify a person, whether it's a family member or someone in the industry who has certain qualities to plan and manage your event. Because event management, we're not just talking about the actual event itself. About a month, sometimes 2 months prior to the event, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. So we want to make sure that whoever we hire has a certain skill set. So the type of skills that we're looking for are someone who is a great problem solver, because no two events are ever alike. Even though they may look alike on paper, events are actually quite different. You need someone who communicates really well, someone who has who has formed relationships throughout that industry. So, for example, someone who has a whole list of venues already at hand, someone who has a list of service providers, because an event is not just about the food and the venue. You have a lot that goes into it. For example, companies that provide tents, chairs, tables, florists, sound guys, videographers. So you need someone who's networked enough to have a good directory of service providers that they can work with. And then you need someone who can multitask, even though I believe that multitasking is a myth. You need someone who's very organized, who can put together a lot of moving pieces to make sure that the event goes smoothly. Some qualifications, in case some of you out there are thinking about getting into event management, some qualifications that do help are project management courses. You can do them at degree level, diploma level, and also very short certification programs. But
are these being offered at polytechnics and some private colleges?
Usually your polytechnics will offer them. I'm sure that most of our universities have something in hospitality management, which does help. People who have done PR courses at universities are also good. It's a good foundation for an event planner.
How about evaluating what you would have done, be it a wedding, be it a funeral itself, or be it any other event? Because we introduced the program by saying we're looking at how strategic, something has been executed. What is it that you look at? How do you evaluate and say, I think we did very well? Because you hear a lot of people complaining, after events that I wasn't served any food, this and that. I didn't even eat the cake of my only niece, my only nephew, and so forth. Then even at funerals, the in-laws will complain about that. They were really ignored. The Wakwasha never came, to even clap hands and so forth. All those things come up, after events. How do you evaluate them?
So what I like to do at the end of the event is have a sit down with the service providers, the owner of the venue, and the client to get feedback. The great thing about involving the venue personnel is they see a lot, because all they provide you with is the venue and sometimes chairs and tables, but then they're standing behind the scenes watching, so they usually have a great view of how an event went. Service providers are also great because they're scattered across your event. They tend to hear more. As an event planner, you're one person, maybe you have a small team, but if I'm sort of standing in this position, I have no idea what's going on the other side. So just polling everybody at the end of the event just to discuss how they think it went. Do they have any constructive criticism, any input, any suggestions, any advice? I think that adds to your qualification, your experience. And that helps sharpen your skills as a planner.
But it also happens at home.
Yes.
An event could have taken place at home, where you don't have these professionally laid out places? How do you do that?
Just give your relatives a call the day after. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the event yesterday. How was the food? Were you comfortable? Did you have a good time? So don't be afraid to ask. I think we usually are afraid to receive negative input. So a lot of times, people shy away from asking, but ask, because it's the negative or constructive criticism rather that will help you grow as an individual or as a planning manager. Yeah.
At the beginning of the program, you did mention that you are a fan of checklists. You always want to have a checklist. How do you make sure that when you're doing something, when you're planning, when you're doing things, your checklist is just the right one that will give you good results and help you to improve in future?
So at every single event, the first thing that I do is meet with the client just to get to know them. I do a little bit of research, and that's how the checklist starts. As you're getting to know your client, you'll start to see what their goal is, what their themes are, and what they're hoping to achieve by the end of the event. And that's how you start your checklist. Another thing that I do is I split the checklists into departments. So the sound guys will have their own checklist. How many mics do we need? Do they have to be wireless? Where is the positioning of the entertainment in relation to the sound guys? Is it a band? Is it a DJ? I've spoken to the clients, so I know that they absolutely hate roses. So when I'm speaking to the person who's decorating the place, I give them a list of do's and absolutely do nots. Another example is the positioning of the tables. So what you want to make sure you do is you meet with all your service providers at the venue. It's not enough to open up your laptop and show them a picture of the venue. They have to see it so that they can see where they're going to place everything and everyone. Is there a top table? Where do you want the top table to be? Some people want it to be in the center, but at the back of the event, because you have maybe entertainment in the front. Sometimes it's vice versa. You want the top table at the front and then your entertainment sort of at the side. So if you're meeting with your service providers and client often at the venue, your checklists start to sort of form itself. Obviously, we have the regular template, which is generic across all events, but because each event is specific to that client, the checklist starts to sort of come together that way.
In a few seconds, NYARIE, say something about proper budgeting.
So what people usually end up getting wrong when they're planning their events is they look at the venue and they look at the food, and that's the extent of their budget. At the end of the day, you have a lot of little moving pieces that make an event. So you have to make sure that you have a float for incidentals. Have an event budget plan in writing. Plug the numbers right next to it. Have a running total. Excel's great. You don't need you don't need expensive programs to run a good budget. Just use an Excel spreadsheet and make sure that the running total at the bottom is within your budget, but always leave room for incidentals on the day.
Well, we'd like to thank NYARIE PURVIS for giving us all that information about how we can plan, how we can execute different events in our lives as well as corporate events. And we're looking at all those things in a more strategic way so that at the end of the day, they are successful. NYARIE PURVIS, would like to thank you very much for coming on to Economic Forum.
Thank you very much for having me.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screens. And also, if you've missed some episodes of Economic Forum, you can watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of the production crew, this is John MASUKU.